Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. A few months ago, the New York Times predicted a fourth straight year of drought for California. The forecasts tend to agree. The Golden State's extreme drought, warming temperatures, and increasingly unpredictable precipitation patterns is expected to continue into the new year. Governor Gavin Newsom warned on Wednesday that Californians must adjust to a hotter and drier world. But the exact opposite occurred. California had a very cold, wet winter, which the Washington Post, of course, blamed on climate change. The Biden administration predicted a very warm and dry winter for California. And the New York Times, which predicted a warm, dry winter for California, now says this could be the mother of all floods. Lake Tulare in Central California used to be the largest body of fresh water west of the Mississippi River. But it dried up about a century ago due to dams upstream and irrigation ditches diverting the water. A few months ago, the New York Times predicted a drought disaster for California, and now they're predicting a flood disaster. And according to them, both drought and flood are caused by the burning of fossil fuels. In 1880, Lake Tulare was receding by more than 1 mile per year. April 19, 1880, Tulare Lakebed in Hanford, California is 5 miles from where it was 4 years ago. On the land reclaimed by the change are found the remains of a corral and cabin, and irrigating ditches can be traced running in straight lines. Wheat is now growing on the bed of the old lake. We can see that the lake has been advancing and receding for a very long time. The natural course of the lake has been strongly affected by humans diverting the water. But this didn't stop some clowns in academia from doing this study in 2016. They concluded that California is the driest it's been in 2,000 years based on Lake Tulare water levels. Perhaps these scientists were unaware that dams had been built upstream. California has had very severe droughts lasting more than 2 centuries in the past. Academics say that the much smaller and shorter droughts California has now are worse than the very severe and very long-lasting droughts they had prior to 700 years ago. According to the press, the drought was caused by climate change, and the end of the drought is caused by climate change as well. They say that the reappearance of the same lake that was in California 150 years ago means that the climate has changed. An honest and intelligent person might recognize the fact that the same lake from 150 years ago means the climate hasn't changed. In 1890, the Historical Society of Southern California printed a booklet describing the history of California floods and drought. California has always been ravaged by alternating droughts and floods. To the Dons and the Padres with their cattle on 1,000 hills and their flocks and herds spread over the plains, an abundant rainfall meant prosperity, a dry season death to their flocks and consequent poverty. We can imagine with what anxiety they scanned the heavens for rain signs as the waning months of the rainy season passed away, leaving but a scanty supply of moisture. The weather prophet with his portents and omens was without honor at such times. California's worst flood occurred in January 1862 and was immediately followed by 3 years of very severe drought, which almost wiped out the cattle industry. During the drought of 1862 to 1864, 30,000 head of cattle died on one ranch alone. Modern climate prophets are no more accurate and have no more honor than they did 150 years ago. Last autumn, the New York Times said the forecasts tend to agree, and every single one of them was wrong. Climate models can't predict short-term climate patterns, much less 100 years in the future. One of the psychological defects of humans is that they always believe the climate is changing. In 1906, Harvard professor Robert de Courcy Ward said that belief in climate change is due to defective memories. In 1939, the Des Moines Register said that the myth of climate change arises over and over again. In 1963, the Chicago Tribune reported, "Climate is still the same, memories are to blame." In my favorite article from 1871 in the Brisbane Courier, Imaginary Changes of Climate. 3 consecutive years of drought, while they've stimulated the inventive resources of practical agriculturalists, have had the natural effect of calling forth a plentiful crop of speculation from weather prophets and projectors and half-instructed meteorologists, and all the philosophic tribe of Laputa in general, to whom the periodical press now affords such fatal facilities. We've often noticed that in the tabular statements of those compilers of weather records who write to the Times, useful and welcome as their communications are, every season is sure to be extraordinary, almost every month one of the driest or wettest or windiest, coldest or hottest ever known. Much observation which ought to correct a tendency to exaggerate seems in some minds to have rather a tendency to increase it. According to the New York Times and Washington Post, the same weather from 150 years ago is an indication that the climate has changed. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on this climate scam for the past 15 years. You can visit him, Kyrie, Caesar, Toki, Upala, and the 4 new puppies on the web at realclimatescience.com.